Went left kind of late. Okay, I'm going to go back up a little bit. So this is just a little thing. I'm not worrying about that right now. So for those who, I was already looking at this earlier. So remember that for each, this is a group I'm supervising. So earlier they did not have, just to show everybody, going back to where it was. They didn't actually have chapter 4 on its own separate page. So you can easily go, insert page break, and here we are. So we have this. They start off well, they tell us what the chapter is about, they remind us about the research question. That's standard, guys. Then I actually renamed, they had something about the data collection response rate for each of their instruments, and this title still might need to be rephrased, but I just gave a tentative title, and then they get into the demographics. So they're going to talk about the demographics for patients, pharmacists, and physicians, and they have a nice big chart, and perhaps it could be a little, the chart itself could be smaller, so we could make it smaller. But what we have a problem with, because you don't need graphs that, remember, you don't need to make the charts um, way too big. They really don't. Oops, you don't need to make it too big, but you want to make sure that things like male, female, and the numbers can be read. So we said that there are 83 people in the study, 50 are female and 33 are male. And then we get into this graph, and at least when I looked at it, I'm not sure it was the original type. You want to make sure that every graph, the actual graph and a table goes with the figure. So tables, by the way, in APA are at the top. The label is table 1, and if it's a figure, it's at the bottom. So they have this right. So then you have figure 2, the age of the non-communicable disease patients, and we had looked at this. So, but I just made a remark. So, for each of these, it's atypical. So, I'm not sure what the age them. So females and males in Jamaica are almost 50-50. I'm not sure what is the proportion for NCDs, male, female, so I will make a remark on that. But I know for sure that across in Jamaica, as people get older, they're more likely to have non-communicable diseases. So this is not like the general population, probably because of the people that they knew who are willing to do that. So you want to make a remark about that even in that discussion. Um, we don't need any remark about the marital status apart from right there. You can start some of the paragraphs by saying figure 2 shows, but I recommend you also have quite a number of them where you start with the data and you end by saying see figure 4 or see figure 3. It's because this thing is not really about, it's not really about the graph, so it's like in this, so instead of this, I would put in the study, 50 said they were single, and then you can say see figure 3. So you can mix it up. For some, you can start figure 2, and some you're going to put the figure at the end of your discussion. And then you're going to take out all references to the question numbers. You want to, where possible, make the graph not too large, because there's no need to have super large graph, just to have them be large. If they need to be large, to communicate something, fine. But if it's not needed to be large, make the thing smaller. It's really a matter of these numbers should be a little bit bigger so we can see them. So then we're continuing. All of these, the graphs don't need to be this large. Why do they need to be this large? I don't see any reason why. And they need to be in the middle of, I think they're supposed to be in the middle. You can look up the APA format. I don't have that memorized. So you should be making sure you follow. And I was making a recommendation earlier that this has 4 areas. And maybe better to show this in a table, because you can easily look to see if somebody's colorblind, or because some of these numbers are close and these are small numbers, you're not making it easy for somebody to know how many people with primary education, because they might not see the blue and see the small number. They don't have to read the text, right? And by the way, the goal of the reading is not just to represent the data here, is to say things that are interesting or problematic. So I'm saying here's one problem. In Jamaica, we don't have 35% of people with first-grade level. So this is not representative of the population. So you want to make a note that this is different than the typical population. You know? And then I also said you should put back question first. So that's where we are. Just went through that quickly. So we have table one, and they've done it right. Table one should be at the top, and they did it right. So this is the first table in the project. By the way, if there's a table back in chapter 2, then this will be table 2. So it's, but the tables are listed. So if somewhere in the review had decided to have a table, whether you got it from the literature or you made it yourself, it's the tables are for the entire document from chapter 1 all the way down to chapter 5 and the appendix.
Sorry, Miss Muir, just click on the heading of the table. Let me see something, please. Reason I say it is that just for everybody's benefit, you can actually auto number your tables and your figures.
Oh, okay.
So that as you move them around in your document, they will automatically change the number. So whichever is the first table will always be table 1, the second one table 2, and so on and so forth.
All right, you can use the style guide in Word.
Yes, and then beyond that, what that allows you to do is if you need to refer to a table or a figure, whether it is above or below or anywhere else in the document, you can actually link it back to the relevant table or figure. And I'm not sure if it's, well, let me just continue. You should also be able to create a list of figures or tables later down in your document, and it would automatically pull up all the tables and figures that you would have labeled as such.
Right. And if you have a lot of tables and figures, you don't want extra work, major product is already too much work. Everybody said the same thing, including me. Therefore, Mr. Wright's advice is amazing, but guess what? You can just Google how to do it or figure it out yourself. So if you can't figure it out yourself, just Google and you'll find it. Not true, Mr. Wright?
That is true.
So you either can sit down and try to figure out how to do it yourself, or just do Google and either find a YouTube video or somebody who's written about it. Most things you can't figure these things out, but you can Google it if you can't figure it on your own. But it's all in the styles. So so I like this particular table because it tells us what the numbers and percentage of cases. But I'm actually wondering here, it's 148 people?
No, Professor. That particular question was a multiple response where they could tick all that applied to them.
Yeah, but I'm still trying to understand. How can you have 148% of what? So you have 122 people with responses. Okay, of this, it was less than 100. So of the maybe 90 something people who answered, of the patients who did this questionnaire, 100%, some of them are multiple, but I don't get how there's 148% of what? You don't see, I'm wondering what this means. We have 3 people who said they had cancer. Yes? And 27 people said they had hypertension, which is not surprising because that's a really high thing in Jamaica. Very interesting, and there's a really high amount of asthma. I wonder if it's because of COVID. Who knows? But this is the numbers they got. I'm trying to understand what this is. Because it says percentage, that's why I'm saying it's puzzling. 148% of 149% of what? You understand my question, Jenny?
No, Professor, because when I did the multiple response frequency table in SPSS, that was what I got. So I haven't figured out also.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to understand it. So what I see here is that 3 people said they had cancer. If I go back to what you had at the beginning, so I'm going to go back to the beginning of this section. You told me it was, I took it out. it was 83 people. 83 people. You had 83 respondents for the NTD, right? Not to go back up there. 83. So you had 87% people did it, and only 83% had viable responses. Right. So we had 83 people that had questionnaires that you decided to use. Am I right? And now we're here.
Yes, Professor.
And we're here, and I can understand why this would add up to more than 83, because some people had multiple responses. So that's why this doesn't add up to 83. But maybe this doesn't need to be there. This is 37% of what? Because 3 of 8, oh, maybe this is 3 out of 83. Anybody have a calculator check it out? 3 out of 83 is 3.10%. That might be it. Sorry, somebody can just work it out for me. Or let's work out 27 out of 83. Is that 32.9%? Nobody has a calculator on the phone. Because if that's what it is, then you should not put this number here. Because it doesn't make any sense. Because that's I'm trying to understand what it is. Let me work it out myself because nobody seems to be what I'm asking. Every number that you have needs to make sense to them. That's what I'm saying. What does it mean? Things that you have should make sense. So let me go to my calculator. Where's the calculator on the phone over here? Yes, I probably should have gone to my Excel spreadsheet calculator. Then somebody's doing it for me. I'm going to say 27 divided by 83. Yes, and that gets 30. No, it gives me 32.5, not 32.9. So I'm still wondering what is this thing doing? 23 divided by 83. That gives me 27.7, which is close to thing. So all I can think is that this seems to be the percentage of the 83, but it's not even coming out to the exact same thing that I'm working out. But I don't understand what would this number mean. Anyway, at the very least, I think this number needs to be taken out because I don't see how it means anything. Because if this means 37% of the 83 people had cancer, this all makes sense. So I'm actually surprised that 40% had cancer, asthma, because that's very unusual for Jamaica. This is, it's an unusual number, but I think this needs to be taken out because it doesn't make sense to me. But let's see what you have here now for the discussion. So, okay, right. So basically, what this just basically account for here is the diseases that are most common, and right. So they basically talk about the 30 with asthma, 27, etc., etc. But the point is, you have these percentage of cases, and you haven't helped us explain what this means, and that is why I would suggest for 33 people with asthma that you say it is 40%. 40% of the 33, which is 40%. And in fact, why do I want to say that? Because the percentages actually have more meaning than the numbers.
You want me to open it for you?
Hello. Please mute yourself. Sorry, does anybody know what I'm talking about here? Let me go back to tell you why I was saying this. So let me go back to the screen and go back to this file and here. Because at the end of it, it's actually the lower the numbers you have, you always want to report the numbers. So if your data collection is of 5 people, you always want to tell us not at 2% of 5, whatever, 50%, no, 60% of the cases said that. If it's 3 out of 5, that's you really always need to use the numbers. But nothing is wrong with using the numbers, but I would suggest strongly that you say 33%, which is 40% of the cases had cancer. Yes? And you don't have to say with that being most common, so you could say the most common diseases are, and just put them in order. Or then maybe we could have a second sentence say the less common among the participants were, and then you put all those at the end. Did you actually list every single disease in this list?
Only 14, Professor.
Oh, see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 11. Did you put all 11 there? 1, 2, 3,
Oh,
4, 5,
some persons did.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Actually, did. So here's the way so when you write for an audience, this is actually a good one to make everybody learn. You write for an audience, you don't just write this one super long sentence. So let's go back to our list and we see the ones that have really the high percentages. The 40.2, the hypertension, the diabetes, those three, so maybe also the obesity. In your particular population, those are the highest. So I would first have a sentence with the most common diseases in our study of patients were asthma, 33 asthma, 33, 42, whatever. Talk about those four, and then you can say, and the other diseases reported by the patients in the study were, and they have another sentence. But this long sentence is a little bit hard to read. Could be 2 sentences quite easily. And then maybe you don't have time for this in this study. At least for the ones that are like maybe the high ones, you could actually kind of look to see how it compares to the Jamaican population. And by the way, when they say, how in the world would you do that? No, this will not be true for everybody. For a lot of people, this might be going overkill. So I'm not going to, this is where you're going to be an A+ project. So ready to be an A+ project, this is what I'll be doing. So in an A+ project, I might be looking for, there are 2 sources for Jamaica. There's statin, as in, the central thing. And for this particular one, there's actually something called the, let me go to Google Scholar. So if it's Jamaica, you can look at the census and get that report, and it's online. But for this, I actually know that there's a National Lifestyle Survey for Jamaica. And the one that was more recent actually hasn't been published, but the 2008 one has been published, and there's a lot of study. But you just go to this one, so the one with 88, and this is Ministry of Health, and so there you go. This is something that is way too much for my poor group, but this has everything you want to know by far, because they actually have of that particular study, they have so much information about what is happening in Jamaica. So this is for their study. So as an example now, they actually write up a chapter 4. So they start off by telling us about, they're going to talk about the triple sample study population. This is their age bands. This is their percentage of recruits, and they even show it male and female by, in fact, which is actually a good thing for you to look at. In fact, everybody could look at this, because it's not about, it's about health. It's just how to present a chapter 4. So they have a nice thing with Kingston and St. Andrew, male, female. It's just basic descriptive statistics. They even show how weights by age bands. You don't have to do all of that. They decided. So let's just move on. You can go and look at this, and I can put this link in the, but for those who didn't follow, I just typed in National Lifestyle Survey Jamaica, and it's the first thing that comes up. Wilkes et al. So Professor Wilkes just retired from UWI recently. He's Professor Emeritus, or how you pronounce it. So I want to scroll past this kind of stuff, but this is what I'm talking about, how to write. I wanted to go to, so you can look at this as an example, guys. These are some pretty smart people, and by the way, this study, one more thing to show you, just to make you be frightened. Let's see if I can show you. Oh, maybe it's not on this one. Oh, this publication only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But the studies are typically actually conducted by over 20 something, like over 25, like over 25 real people. And then I have publications where I started to those people publish. So I wanted to go to now, maybe I should go back to the table of contents. Maybe I should do that. Or maybe get me to where I want. So this is about, oh, injury. I don't want to know about injury. So I'm just scrolling to find what I want. And so maybe it might be easier to find it by not scrolling, but by other situations. But this might be not be a start. Maybe I want to go back to the table of contents. Yeah, that might make more sense. Because it has a lot of information. It's about cigarette smoking, narcotics, alcohol use, lifestyle history by educational attainment, social economic status, chronic diseases. Okay. So like even here, you have chronic diseases or people who have family members with chronic diseases. Yeah. So this is about how people know about their family members with diseases. And then this is self-reported. So in 2008 in Jamaica, back to my point, this is what it's like. So let's go to your, what was that one you had number one? Asthma. That's what I said. And it was very strange, 7%. So here's my point to my group. Look for table 6.3. And I'm not saying to do for every single thing, but you had asthma as in your something to be really high. You know, back to my group, want to get A plus. You might want to mention that that some things are not like the population. But that's and another thing which you wouldn't be able to get from here, which would be in the second report, like the percentage of Jamaicans who are actually studying different educational levels. Anyway, enough of that. Oh, by the way, let me stop here for a second again. Is there anybody else waiting to comment? It's okay. It's only me, Mr. Wright, and 10 students. So guys, I can continue with that. But would it be more helpful for us to look at a properly published study that's long, like what you're supposed to do that I want to have there? Or would it make sense to continue with that study for a little bit longer, not that much longer, to see how I would correct it? What would be more helpful right now? This is not wanting to talk or type. Talk or type, right? Do you understand the question? Hello?
Professor, you can start with the published study.
Okay. I want to hear from at least two other people, including Mr. Ed. Anybody talk?
Yes, I agree with journalists.
Okay, great. I'll do that. Because I think we probably did enough of that. Because as I said, I didn't want to focus on her study and I never thought of looking at that study. So let's look at that then. Sounds great. So let's go back to sharing screen and find that study. Right, so let me just see one more second. All right, so the only thing I still learn from them, because they have actually gotten a good start, because just to show you, they have actually started doing the cross tabulations, all of that. They have made a start. So you see what I will commend this group for, they have definitely made a start, and starting is always a great thing. So let's go back to the beginning of this. This is a long study, your study won't be as long as this, right? So this study, if you look at it, they actually have a table of contents. By the way, you will have, you know what's excellent about this? You see this study? They have a cover page. They actually have an acknowledgement list as well. But all of these pages have numbers which are Roman, sorry, musical numbers. You actually, to do this, what you're expected to do in your project, you need to have what is called sections. So your document will have at least 2 sections. So the first section, which will include the table of contents, which all the way up to the executive summary, will be these, what are these called? Roman numerals? Yes, I think so. Lowercase Roman numerals. And after that, it goes with Arabic numbering. I think that's right. So Here's the table of contents. Notice they actually have a list of tables. Acknowledgement is not required, but it is good. You must have tables or figures or both, and you're going to have appendices in your project as well, because in your appendices is going to include things like your ethics form, all of your questionnaire, interview, whatever, all those must be in appendices, right? If you developed a prototype, you need to put some technical specifications in your appendices. If you did a major development, you're going to need to have a whole heap of documentation on that. And on that note, we had a meeting today to talk, a subset of us to talk about, can I find that? Yeah, but it's that we haven't really finished it. But let me just go straight to that. So we were just talking. So the evaluation of the mini development is 25% of the overall, and it will be relevance 5%, requirements 5%, functionality as in demonstration of your prototype 10%, and user interface 5%. And if you're doing major development, 5%, 10% for requirement, design and development, 10%, functionality 10%, user interface 10%, testing reports 5%, and presentation aids is 7%, quality of presentation is 8%, and question and answer for all groups, for all of them is 10%. And pretty much it's the same as before. So if you're doing mini development, research and mini development, 50% of your mark is what's called technical content. 10 marks each for chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5 in the presentation. If you're doing major development, only 25% is for the technical content, as in 5% each for chapter 1 to 5. And if you're doing research only, 75% of the mark goes to the technical content, chapters 1 to 5, which is what I'm actually showing now. So, any comments or questions about that? Really, I would say your biggest thing is to finish. The earlier you finish your first draft, then the more you can get feedback on all these matters. So let's go back to where we were in this. Yes. So you have this table of contents, and so this is not in the same way you do major project. So they have an introduction, which you know you have an introduction. So they actually separate it into part 1 and part 2 and part 3, which is different because of how their project is. You're going to have 5 chapters, and you know your chapter 1 is the introduction. Your chapter 1, your chapter 2 is a literature review, which they do not have in this particular project. You have a chapter 3, which is methodology. They have a different chapter 3. But at the moment, what we're saying is this here, their chapter 4, 5, 6, all of this, up to here. In fact, even part 3 too. No, I see what they did. So if I look at it, part 2 results is what we're calling our chapter 4. So they have so many results, they could not put it in one chapter. So they put the social demographics in one chapter alone with sections. They put another section. But for your project, all of what they call chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 would be your chapter 4. And then what they did is they then compared, because there's been other lifestyle surveys in the past, they did a comparison. This will be typically called the discussion. Well, actually, a discussion down here. So they did a comparison, analytical comparison, and then they went ahead and had the discussion and had a conclusion recommendation. So you will have your chapter 5 conclusion and recommendation. So I'm going to say that we're going to look at just some sections of this to show you how to do it. So now let's now go to chapter 4. See if I can find it. So let's go back to chapter 4 again. So this chapter 4, what I like about it is it does a couple things. You see how every single table or figure is always on the same table, on the same page? If yours is not that way, you need to fix it. And by the way, you can normally only fix it if you make sure that when you label something, the label goes with the graph. So there's a way to set it up in Word. So you always have that set up together, or maybe at the end you decide to fix it all up yourself. And the like, it's typically better when you have text between every single table and figure. So you won't have two tables beside each other with no text in between. Right? So just look at the formatting. You see that their formatting is not bad. They don't have empty spaces. They have a little bit of empty space, but that's going to happen sometimes. But they're properly formatted it, so it looks nice. I mean, it don't look exciting, but you can deal with it.
Miss Mira, there's a feature called Keep with Next. There's a formatting feature called Keep with Next, which will allow you to keep the text with.
Yeah, man, I know.
Oh, well, I'm just sharing it for the students,
Yeah,
for them to look.
Yeah, they don't know. So let me go back to Word. Which one is it? This? Oh, that's my memo. I don't want to show what. I mean, I can show it here too, but right. So like here, there is paragraph. I can show that this is not. Keep with Next does that. But by the way, if I put that space in here and I wanted to keep this with this, I'd have to make sure I select both of these, or to do it two times. So it's so right now it's not, they're not. So no, they're not both keep with Next. Get rid of that. But the point is, if I wanted, because this phase 2 is about this, I should have put that keep with Next, because I always want that there. So look at the presto. It's going to go down there. You see, guys? Because this phase 2 is about this. So it has use. And by the way, you can actually set up the, no, that's too much information, but you can set up the style, guys, if it's not already set up that way, that the various headings will keep with the rest of the text. But yes, as Mr. Right knows how Word works. Back to where we were. So this document, somewhere in here, right? So what I was saying is, you see, they have not only just presented the data, they have actually spent some time thinking about how to present the data, not just formatting. They've also done all kinds of fancy things to show inclusion and St. Andrew, here are the males and the females. So they've set it out. And when you set out things like that, you make it easier for the reader. So you're both going to discuss it, but sometimes you don't discuss if there's nothing particularly worth discussing. All they said here is that look at this large table. Look at how sensible they are. They say in all parishes the female recruits were about twice in number to the male recruited. They're actually summarizing what is happening. The highest proportion of recruits were from St. Andrew, which can be attributed to the large proportion of the population residing in these parishes, and probability proportion in size sampling methodology, table 4.2. So they didn't bother telling me about everything that's in the table, but people can read the table. They're telling us things that are important. So I'm actually not surprised that there are more females, because in general, females tend to be more cooperative in lots of things like this. But they're telling us important information that you might not be able to easily read from the table. I would have actually preferred for them to tell exactly what was female recruits, like it was 57% and the males were 32%, but they didn't choose to tell me that. But the point is, they told me something that was very important. But if I look at it, I do see that males, there were 887 males and 1961. So if I look at the total, I can see that there are much more males than females. But I would have wanted to know the percentage. But yes, the point is what you usually supposed to do in these descriptions. So this is just an introduction section. See, they tell us that they were that and 6 that fails and that many males, but they have a large amount of respondents, which is not surprising. These studies, by the way, cost millions of dollars. They're not, and so they need to write it up properly. They've got lots of money to this study. And like in this one, they're only going to tell us that table is 4.4a. So by the way, guys, in general, when you're writing about the data, so there are 2 goals: to present the data clearly with a properly labeled title that makes sense, right? Then you also must write about what is the most important data in the table or in the figure. So this is just telling us what the table is about, which you can read by yourself. Let's see. Let's see what this tells me about urban and rural. Oh, this is figure 4.5. So this particular graph, they tell us that there's an even distribution of the portion of the population residing in urban and rural areas in both sex and age categories, with a slightly large proportion of young persons residing in urban areas and reverse among older persons. A notable departure from this pattern is a larger proportion of males 25 to 35 in urban compared to rural areas, which is offset by a slightly higher proportion. By the way, why are they telling all of this? They're telling all of this because at the end of it, they actually want the study to be as representative of the Jamaican population as possible. And when it starts, that is why they're telling about departures. That's why I was saying before about that the study that I'm supervising, when they have this high percentage of young people with being sick, that's not the typical population. And so you need to remark on it, in my opinion. Oh, what's this about the population being black? Oh, down here. Oh, everybody either black or mixed. Wow. So it tells it. So this is now they're now going to reporting on these various and look at this too. You see how they have this table with lots of information. Notice they made it fit all on one page. And by the way, if it couldn't fit on one page, they would need to have table for 6A and 6B, and then the next part would actually need to come again. You cannot just say you could. It would be incorrect to have a table over 2 pages and not label it both times. But they sensibly found a way to get all this on one, and then they discussed it up here. So they discussed this graph and they discussed that table all in here. Wow, total. So even having people passing different things. College. So wait, more people pass college and university. This is very unlike the general population. Isn't that interesting? Almost 90% of the population have attained at least a secondary school education, etc. So you can't really say yourself, I don't want to read all this right now. That's not going to be an exciting way of doing that. So I would say just doing this, the hard work is about creating a really good table or figure. And I don't think any of us is going to disagree. These tables are clear. Male, female, total, and you can see each of them separately. The one you can't see very clearly is Cape, because apparently Cape is a small number. Maybe they could have had a different graph. I don't know if they talked about it in here somewhere. I guess not many people are doing Cape. That's why it's so small on this list. So they have all this data, and then they will cover the employment of the people in the survey. So this is all demographics. So I'm just going to skip this now because let's go to another chapter. I don't feel like looking at this chapter because I don't want to. My own choice. I'm about to. You see, okay, let's look at this one. So this is a nice line graph. So this is showing Jamaicans aged 15 to 74 who reported smoking more than 100 cigarettes. Is that for the year? So let's see where it starts. So this one is figure 5.2, and figure 5.2 is reported where? I'm just trying to figure out where this is reported. Oh, they're not helping me out. I'm actually looking to see where they discuss each one. But generally, notice what I said, that they don't even bother to tell me where each figure was. They're reading at the beginning, but I would add that they should have said, see figure this at the end of one of the sentences. They didn't want to do it here, or they were doing it. So let me start. They started smoking. So they talked about 3 kind of risky behaviors: alcohol use, marijuana use, cigarette smoking. So let's start there. So that's figure 5.9. So they tell us more about that. The current use of alcohol was highest in the 15 to 24 band and decreased steadily with age. So by the way, that's important information. Now we can go and look and see if that's what we find. So, oh, okay. Is that true? Does it go down? Current and fast? Oh, it's going down here. 83. Okay, so from 25 to 34, it goes from 8 for alcohol to 74. Oh, and it goes a lot down 65. And for marijuana use, I guess forget about the 15 to 24-year-old. Then it goes down. So you know what's interesting about this to me, and there's some exceptions, because for cigarette smoking, there's a whole lot of people 45 to 64. If you look at it overall, yes, there is an overall pattern of it going down, but with exceptions. And that exception does it goes up. It goes on from 25 down. But let's go back. So what they're saying is not so the current level. Okay. Where did I start? Oh, it's here. Oh, so I was looking at this. No, it's the overall 5.9. Okay, so the current use and it steadily decreases with age. Conversely, the proportion of persons who reported past increases steadily with age. Current, so they basically sit down and talk about the data there. The trend with age is even less obvious with cigarette smoking, although the frequency of use appears to increase with age. So cigarette smoking is a little bit different. It certainly is. You see here, cigarette smoking is 10, then it goes up to 15, then it goes down to 13, and it goes back up. But even though overall these all tend to go down with age, they actually make sure to point out to us because we might not be taking the time to look at the data ourselves. So you have the data, then you're going to discuss it sensibly. This is the hard work of writing up. So you see this data, this is this little table right here, to sit down and analyze it. And by the way, you could also take these numbers and try to do some statistical analysis. But this is just really, these people have looked at that data and looked for patterns. And so that's why when you get data and you present it properly, there's a lot of patterns to look for. So writing is more than just, oh, So if you have, so let's go to the group that we saw earlier, that they had the age group patterns. You can, when you get the data, see if there are differences between, let's just take credit card security concerns based on age. And I bet you my hypothesis is that it will go up with age. Young people think that, oh, nothing will ever happen to them. And old people, if nothing has happened to them, they keep hearing bad reports. So I'm not sure what's the point, but I think there's going to be some increase. So it might be useful to break it down. This is called a cross-tabulation by age. Everybody understand what I'm saying that? So you want to report not just the total data, but you might want to look at demographics and then break down. So remember, most of you would have 3 demographics. You would have gender demographics, you would have age group demographics, and you might have educational demographics. You might have others too. You might have decided to take data about internet access or mobile use. All of those might be things that it might be useful to do a cross tabulation of one variable against another variable. Are you going to see what time it is? It's 7:12. It's past the time. Can't believe I'm here still doing this. Stop share. Wow. One message. Oh, okay. All right. Yes, guys. So this is the end of this session. Since we are coming late, and this is what I've been doing. We looked at a questionnaire for one group, and we then looked at the beginning of one project, and this gave some basic pointers of how to continue chapter 4. So by the way, in general, normally in chapter 4, you start with a written introduction. This is not the PowerPoint, this is or the slideshow. This is what you'd write. This generally start with a write-up about the introduction, about what chapter would be about, which includes your research questions. Then you go to demographics, if that's in your project, as in things like age and gender and education and anything else. It might have been use of technology, etc. Then you go to the questions that typically you organize, usually by research question. So I really want to know how you're going to organize that data. What the question I looked at earlier, it seemed as if the questions were not organized related to the research questions. They're kind of ad hoc. So you may not want to present them in the way you have them because you want to present the questions in a way that logically go together. All right. So you go ahead and you present the project so that it is clear. And then you essentially usually by research question. And then the end of chapter 4, you essentially then summarize what you found before you get to answering the research questions. And in chapter 5, you go again to talk about what's in chapter, the research questions, and then you get into answering each of them one by one. I think I'll leave it at that. Anybody has any questions? Because we're out of time. Out of time for the 5 to 7 time. Right, was this
Professor,
yes,
Professor, should we stay on this link for our meeting or join the other one?
I soon decide. I soon come to that. Any
Okay.
questions or comments? Okay, so I'm going to assume it was crystal clear. Athena, thank you. So no questions or comments. So just to let everybody know, I'm about to meet with some groups I'm either supervising or co-supervising. So I'm going to, so if anybody has anything to say, please say it quickly. So for all of those who are joining, including Mr. Wright, I'm going to stop this meeting and join back on the other link that I had said. Any quick question before I leave, guys? So next week, Wednesday, I don't know, I found out today it's also a faculty awards, which maybe the whole faculty awards will be online, I don't know, but I am planning to continue to have this, and we're hoping to have a presentation about how to do online presentations from a past student who did exceedingly well next week, Wednesday, or if it's not next week, Wednesday, it will be at another time to be announced, and I'll let you know. But it probably will be on next week, Wednesday. If anybody who's here has a particular preference for your major project to be in the evening, you should shoot me an email at skitpapers@gmail.com. Otherwise, it will be on Tuesday, July 6th during the day.
So, Professor, if we plan to do the pre-recorded version, should we email you that information before the date?
Well, not necessarily. I don't know if I want a list because you still want me to come to do the question and answer. You got that,
Okay,
right?
Professor.
So
yes, Professor.
What I'm going to say to anybody who wants to do pre-recording is that you're still going to need to, I would say you still want to just show up, as in plan to have everybody show up, but certainly one person will be ready to the goal is not for SCIT to play your thing. It would be, let's say Jenny shows up to the meeting and she presses play on the pre-recording, and at the end of that 25 to 30 minutes presentation, then her and her whole group is probably there for the whole thing being done, because let's say Janelle has a internet access problem. Everybody's here, maybe somebody has a problem with internet access, but as many people as possible are there. And then when it gets to the question and answer part, what would happen next is that everybody's there to be ready for the question and answer. Hopefully that clears it up, Janelle.
Yes, Professor, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So guys, I will see you next week. If you have any other burning question, you can contact me by email. I'm going to go to this other meeting on another link. So have a wonderful evening.